Well, hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Keys to the Shop, where we give you insights, inspiration, and the tools you need to grow as a coffee service professional. My name is Chris DeFirio. I'm your host for the show. And of course, I am grateful that you have taken the time to join us on the show, whether you're listening on Spotify or one of your podcasting apps like Overcast or Apple Podcasts, or you're on YouTube and you can see me talking to you right now. I would say best thing to do, subscribe to the show. It's really, a great way to stay updated with new content as it comes out. For instance, we just released our latest Rate of Rise. We have a new season sponsored by Mill City Coffee Roasters, Mill City Roasters over in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And we are talking about pre-blending green or post-roast blending. Great conversation. But that's a new thing now that those of you who are subscribed, immediately you got the notification, got to enjoy that content right away. And you can search the large catalog of episodes, which is nearing about 1,000 episodes, just by topic within your player. That's helpful as well. So go ahead and do that. And also, rating and reviewing the show. If you love what we do, you want to do a 5-star rating on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts, that really helps. Thank you so much. Now, I am excited. I'm really excited because I'm getting ready to launch a new season of the key holder coaching groups. We are over halfway through our current cohort. We're having amazing conversations with the key holder coaching group members. These are experienced coffee shop owners who are meeting every other week for 2 hours at a time, helping each other game plan success, both personally and in their businesses. And we see a lot of great insights, advice, support, and encouragement, accountability. And this mastermind style coffee shop owner group is an amazing tool for people who are looking to refine the business of working in a coffee shop or owning a coffee shop. So if you are interested in signing up for this, if you want to be a part of a group that is set up to collaborate for success in people first operations of a coffee shop so that everyone involved can thrive, all you need to do is email chris@keystotheshop.com, and I will put you on a list of people who are interested in early access to the applications for the key holder coaching groups. These groups are about 5 to 6 people, like I said, with at least 2 years of experience running their coffee shop or your coffee shop slash roastery. There's a lot of cafe roastery owners, but it's really for coffee shop owners who have 2 years of experience, at least under their belt. And it is a mutual kind of commitment. You agree to basically give great advice and lend yourself and your experience and expertise to the group and to those who are asking for your help. And you also will receive a lot of help and insights from the group, both in our mastermind sessions, also on our app. And there's just a lot of great stuff that happens there. So that's coming up, actually. We're going to be doing this very soon. The new group starts in March, towards the end of March, and I'll be posting more updates about this on Instagram and other places. So again, if you're interested in the key holder coaching groups, chris@keystotheshop.com. Now, today's episode is brought to you by a couple of really wonderful companies. First, Arto.com, Arto Brick out in Los Angeles, stonework, tile, hard surfaces for beautiful spaces. If you are a coffee shop looking for some wonderful stonework for your cafe, Arto.com. Now, we're also sponsored by the Barista Series from Pacific at pacificfoodservice.com. And the Barista Series is just like the cornerstone of plant-based beverages. Wonderful product, wonderful people. And we're going to talk about both Arto and the Pacific Barista Series later in the episode. But for now, I want to dive right into the topic because it is one of those things that is near and dear to my heart. The workflow of a coffee bar. Actually, we just got back from Wisconsin at Hiker Coffee in Eau Claire, in Chippewa, actually, is where their flagship cafe is. They have a roastery in Eau Claire, and then they have their first brick and mortar, which is this recording. I think it actually either is soft opened or it is open right now, but wonderful folks there. And we did one of Keys to the Shop Consulting's signature 3 or 4 day barista intensives where we did a lot of training on the menu and we focused heavily on the foundations and the workflow of various drinks. And the reason why this is important is when customers come into the cafe, I've said this before, they expect that you know what you're doing. The only way for us to know what we're doing is to be comfortable in what we're doing. If we're not comfortable in what we're doing, it's because we haven't been trained to do it well. And that means we're nervous, we're insecure, we shut down, and the customers feel it. You know this feeling. I know this feeling. It has a ripple effect. We hide behind the machine. Customers write bad reviews. All hell breaks loose. I'm going a little overboard, but you get the picture. Okay. So, training on what we do in the cafe is really important. There is that expertise that we have allows us to be comfortable under pressure. Pressure from out on the other side of the bar is actually a compliment. It's a long line is a compliment. We should be excited to see a long line because all these people are here not to avoid a line, but to get good service and hospitality and a quality product in a consistent manner. This is just the basic value proposition of the coffee shop. And then there's other stuff on top of that. There's your unique branding and causes. There's the different educational opportunities and facilitating customer success through coffee at home. But it starts at that foundational level. And if we are to be successful in anything, we have to be successful in the first things. And that breaks down to basically making the menu very well together with your coworkers for the sake of the customer all day long. And that's what training is all about, maintaining the space and also maintaining yourself. So this list of different, I think, tips for workflow and bar presence, if you apply these things, makes an incredible difference in how customers feel once they've experienced the whole performance of a coffee shop producing coffee. Their drink being one of the things. If you think about a performance on a stage, you are writing the lines that the actors are saying in the play. And so you participate in this yourself. And that's a very unique thing to have as a coffee shop. It's a co-created thing. Every day is kind of new. So if you focus in on some of these workflow tips, you're going to be much more likely to be confident, to embody the values of that particular business, of your business, under that pressure of the expectation the customer brings, that actually in your good training turns into this compliment. We're excited now. We're not excited in the way that somebody would be fearful. Fear is kind of an excitement. We get overly, it's like an agitation, right? Agitation or worry is something when we're not in control. And when we are in control, it turns into excitement because we're anticipating something good. And that's what we want. So let's get right to it. I think there's a few things I want to cover. Some are just very basic. We don't need to spend a whole lot of time on them. And some are requiring a little bit more explanation. And so the first thing that I'm going to say, I think, is I would expect a training, first of all, to involve training people to make the menu. The menu is the most important thing. All derivations of the menu that customers can come up with, potential questions that they might have. What if this? What if that? Can I do this? Can I do that? So it's not good enough to just train with one kind of milk. You have to train with all the different kinds of milks. You have to train with decaf as well as regular. You've got to know how to dial them in and know that maybe decaf can be pulled at a different rate than your main espresso or a single origin or a process of a coffee that is a little bit more delicate. Some of these processing methods require more finessing from the grinder to the portafilter. The same applies to your pour overs, to your batch brew. There's a bunch of basic recipes that then have a whole constellation of different derivations of that recipe. And that is your menu. That is not just how to make straight all the things that you have up there, which is what you should do, but also what are the variations? How do you train that? You have to put it into a system. A system that says we're going to start with the basics. We're going to, of course, espresso and milk is the base thing: coffee, espresso, and milk. Now, how can we give people confidence in their ability to make those things with regular excellence, and then add to that confidence a little bit more pressure, a little bit more pressure, a little more complication? When we do drink drills at our trainings, we're constantly putting different drink orders in, 3, 4, 5 orders at a time, that have the kinds of milks or specifications that you might dread. Take the fear out of the interaction by facing it head on, pulling it into the light of day, training people on it. So when it does happen, people aren't just freaking out, and they're just saying, why can't you just order a standard 6-ounce cappuccino to go? I do good latte art there. So that's my comfort zone. And in that thought process of wishing the customer would be less complex is an avoidance of the obvious, which is I wasn't trained well enough to do what the customer wants. And then we start to do an us versus them thing. Customers are complicated. It's the customer's fault, when actually it's just a training issue. So you have to train on the real stuff that is going on in your cafe. And if you put together a menu, we're always doing this when we're talking to clients, saying, if you say you're going to have something, think of all the space that takes up, all of the expectations it brings with it, all of the assumptions that people have about that particular item. It's not just like, oh yeah, we'll buy this machine and we'll buy this ingredient, we'll throw it on the bar. You have to be willing to invest time, energy, space, and continually do that in order to be a master at doing those things. So train the menu, train constantly, and update your training as you update the menu. So that's the number one thing I would say. Maybe it's the number one thing in terms of importance, but it's a good thing to start off on. Okay. Now, I'm going to then say we should go to talking. Talking is one of the things that I think is missing in a lot of bars. When I say talking, I mean basically, I don't know if you've watched the Restaurant Nightmares or the Gordon Ramsay Master Chef episodes. Like, we've watched a lot of them in my house. We watch a lot of Gordon Ramsay stuff just for fun. And one of the things that he always chides people on, where the people that are getting quiet, they start making the most mistakes. And I don't mean people are yelling and screaming and there's confusion. What I mean is people that are talking to each other about what they're doing, why they're doing it. They're using words like behind you. Hey, I'm just going to get this real quick. Oh, excuse me, I got to grab that. Or I'm finishing this drink, or there's a vanilla latte on the bar. Oh, vanilla latte? Heard. You're just talking to each other about what's happening on the bar so that there's this understanding. But most people who don't talk operate from assumption. They assume that the person right next to them, 2 feet away, heard everything, understands everything. But what they don't understand is that we can easily get tunnel vision. We're just human beings, right? I'm just a baby. I don't hear everything. I can't, because part of me is I'm multitasking. I need a little bit of extra help from my coworkers to repeat things, and then they need to somewhat almost expect a response from me. I think you should train that in. You can say heard, you can repeat it. And I have done this so much where you catch mistakes. Oh, didn't they say soy? Oh, you're right. They said soy. Oh, I forgot about that. I have been on the bar where I'm making the drinks. I didn't take the order, but the person who did take the order passes it to me, forgets to write it on the cup. And I've helped, finish the detail of that drink, but it's gone the reverse way as well. So we have to be there for each other and communicate what we're working on, confirm that we've heard that, so we can have some closure to each drink, to know, even exit out on the KDS screen, or stab the ticket onto the spike, or throw it in the trash can. Whatever it is you do at the end, we know we've accomplished the right drink the right way. We've communicated the whole process, and you can have your own flavor of what talking looks like. But I think just like the way we have vernacular we use for tasting coffee, you need to come up with a kind of language or rhythm or something that you do behind the bar that's going to help facilitate clarity behind the bar, because confusion is just a lack of communication, like one little lapse of communication away. So that is the other thing I would say, is talking and communicating and having clarity is really important for great workflow. And remember, this is about workflow and bar presence, because the way you communicate is not just the way you talk, it's also your body language. Your body language has to be, and this is our next thing I want to mention, available. Not only are you available to help your coworkers and you're not disappearing, or like, say, go into the dish pit and just try to avoid, all the other work. We're there. We're trying to be helpful as much as we can within our role description, whether it's our primary role or we're doing something that's a secondary task because we don't have something to do in our primary role. We are available. We're not trying to, text as much as we possibly can, a private conversation while we're not immediately called upon, because there's a whole work on the periphery that requires our presence. Especially, again, your coworkers need you as well. So you need to be available, but also to the customers. You need to be available to them so they see you, and your body language is communicating availability. And in order to do that, you need to actually be pursuing personally the poise of somebody ready to serve, whether that's your coworker or the customer. It shows in your head up, head on a swivel. You're not leaning, you're not texting. We don't get into the whole phone behind the bar. Don't really recommend it. It takes you out of the game. You don't need to have that mess there, and it's unsanitary. But anyway, there's a whole episode about that. The point is that making yourself available and poised and ready to serve is going to make you more ready to perform the task of making the drinks, and also to assist with somebody else's task and taking orders from customers. So bar presence that way, making yourself available, is critical. And I told people this in our latest training, which is, even when you're outside of the safety zone of the coffee bar, you're out on the floor. And this is unique to coffee bars because for us, we are kind of a quick serve restaurant model. A lot of our cafes, you're behind the bar, it becomes your zone of safety. There's this invisible wall between you and the customer. So it's like when a kid hides and they don't understand hide and seek, they just kind of curl up on the ground. And if they can't see you, you can't see them. We almost feel that way behind the bar. Making yourself available to the customer eliminates this wall. But when you're outside the bar, restocking shelves, doing something that is typically, not behind the bar, you still have to be ready to serve. You still have to be ready to be asked questions. And when we get this assumption that, well, I have something to do and now this customer is slowing me down in my task, it comes across in the way that we answer those questions. We don't give them our best service. When you're on the clock, when you are representing the company, you've got the apron on, that people want an answer to a question, you're on. And you have to already have agreed within yourself that this is the job that you want to do, and not throughout the shift seek ways to take it back. Oh, I regret it. I take it back 5 minutes at a time. That's the way that some of this service, these service fails happen, is because we've got this kind of a split personality. We say we want to be baristas, that then we change our mind, then we want to be baristas and we change our mind. Just be, single-minded, be available throughout the entire time. So we're going to also talk about the line itself. Now, I talked about your presence, or I talked about the line as a compliment to you. And that compliment is people love what you do enough to come back again and again and make it busier. What's true is that you have control. And operators, I think you should give your baristas freedom to be able to slow a line down so that you can produce the best you can behind the bar. Now, I'm not saying you should be slow. Don't hear me wrong. I'm not saying go super slow. I'm saying control the bar, control the flow, create a wonderful experience. Know that people really want their drinks quicker once they part with their money. We all know that, right? They go through the line, they order. Now that the order is in, the clock really starts ticking. But up to that point, we have the ability to lean into intentionality and to train people to see this as an opportunity to lean into control, lean into hospitality even more. Don't start sacrificing hospitality just for speed. Speed is probably the number one thing that people turn to when they don't know what else to do. Get it over with, go fast, crush the rush, and all this, the phrases we use. Crushing a rush, crushing is the operative word. To crush, of course, you would think we did very well during that rush. Now you have to define what well looks like. Is it just getting people all their drinks super fast and you kind of know that you biffed it on a few of them, but no one's going to know? Then you didn't crush anything, right? Maybe you crushed people's dreams of having a good coffee at your coffee shop. And you're going to pay for that later. The business will pay for that later, right? So we need to create expectations on our teams that when we get super busy, that's not the time to start sacrificing quality. This is the time to actually lean into intentionality even more, because there's more people observing us, forming opinions about the company, forming opinions about specialty coffee. If you don't really care about the company you work for, if you think your boss is a jerk and you're actively looking for another place to work, at least do it for specialty coffee, because people don't know your drama. They don't know the ins and outs. All they think is you're a barista, you work in specialty coffee. I had a bad experience at one of those shops once, and I'm never going back. So if you find yourself in that place, and there are many of you who do, and I feel for you, do it for the purpose of the greater industry that relies upon the customer having a good opinion about the coffees you represent, so that they can consistently order those coffees and feel it's worth their money. That at least is the baseline that we need to operate from. And in the better bars, you do want the company to succeed because your boss isn't a jerk and because the company is good and they're doing great things. And gosh darn it, I'm happy where I am and I'd like to see it succeed. Great. All points in between, we just really need to make sure that when we're busy, we're doing our best, right? We're trying to lean into that with what we do behind the bar. Now, another thing that I want to talk about is what I call the cleaning tax. And I've mentioned this other places, but cleaning as you go, basically. The cleaning tax, to me, I say every drink, I charge a 10-second, 5 to 10 second tax of me cleaning around what I just did and prepping for the thing I'm about to do. All of us who work behind the bar, you might have a line of 20 drinks, and hopefully your line of drinks is not 20 deep. Maybe some workflow issues if we're letting it pile up that deep, but you're taking about 2 or 3 drinks at a time. You're chunking it out, right? You're focusing in. There's only so many you can focus in on at one time. You're aware of these other things, but you also are only human again, and you can focus in on these different sections of that line of drinks. And one of the things that you have to do is you have to clean as you go. A dirty bar equals a dirty mind. I don't mean it like that, okay? That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is your mind is all kind of, chaotic. If your bar is just water and milk and coffee and all sorts of dirtiness around you, it's way harder to think. Maybe this is just me, because I'm like that. I will put things at angles that please me. I will clean, I will tidy, and if I keep it fresh, if I can keep the back of my bar and the work area looking very nice, even when I'm busy, things go better. They teach you this even in restaurants that are very busy. You're getting in the weeds, clean your station. Focus on your mise en place. Look to make sure that you're organized. Because what do they say? Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. You gain more by being in control. And cleaning is not just making it pretty, it's making it right. It is a precursor to accuracy and details. So, to support your baristas in doing this, you can demonstrate it when you work the bar. You can provide them with the tools to clean. You can train them to clean in your follow-up trainings. Hopefully you have trainings with your staff that don't just focus on onboarding, and then when people mess up, you come, come on, get retrained, and then hopefully that lasts forever. And it won't. You just need to have consistent follow-up training and investment into skill development and upskilling your staff. And that's how you're going to win here, is by giving them the tools that you have permission to clean. If you get the drinks out in record time, but your bar looks like a bomb went off, I'm not going to be that happy about that, because I see the customers, they see that. And how you do one thing is how you do everything. Chances are really good that the bus bin is just overflowing, and that the bathrooms haven't been looked at, and that the nobody's doing cafe checks, because we are just, again, sacrificing everything to crush the rush in the wrong way. So cleaning is one of those things that helps us gain control of quality and of ourselves, and gives us permission to do a really good job, and a job that customers can see we're doing well. Gives them confidence, because then they don't feel sorry for you. It's not great to, well, in the immediate, it might be great to get pity tips where they feel sorry for how crazy things are in the cafe and they just give you a couple extra bucks. But long term, they're probably not going to bring another guest to your cafe. And that means less sales, lower sales numbers. That's not good for business. Okay, so that's why I say clean as you go. It's really important. Hey, everybody, this is Chris DeFurio, and we'll be right back to our episode. But I did want to talk to you about our sponsors today. If you are a coffee shop looking for stonework, hard surfaces, tile and brickwork in your cafe, you're building something that you really want to pop, a unique space for the cafe experience to really sing and be meaningful and impactful for your customers, then arto.com, at artobrick on Instagram, is a place where they specialize in making beautiful, unique spaces. They are family owned and operated in Los Angeles, run by Armin and Vod, whose father Arto founded Arto Brick. And now their product, their tiles and stonework, all made locally in LA, are featured in restaurants, in studios, in cafes around the world. They do beautiful work, hand-painted tiles and all sorts of different surfaces. So go to their website, arto.com, and especially reach out on Instagram, at artobrick. Say hello to Armin. Tell him that Chris from Keys to the Shop sent you. Now, we're also sponsored by our friends over at the Barista Series from Pacific. You can find out more information at pacificfoodservice.com. Get samples of their plant-based performance beverages and try it for yourself. I think you're really going to be pleased with what you taste, what you experience in the making of your lattes and cappuccinos. Plant-based beverages are dominating the industry. A lot of cafes sell way more plant-based beverages than anything else. You really want something that has been designed by people who care so much about the experience that customers have and the coffee industry itself. And the Pacific folks are just wonderful in how they have been involved in the industry for so long. That's why their products perform the way they do. So again, if you're looking for the best plant-based beverages for your customers, check them out, pacificfoodservice.com. Now, the other thing that I wanted to talk about here, and I'm going to mention this really quickly, is not a huge, well, it's a huge deal to me, I think, and maybe it's a huge deal to you too, but if I explain it, you'll see what I mean here. There's two things. One, it's what kind of a limit we put on our expression behind the bar. It's important to me that my conversation between myself and another barista, especially if you work in a quiet cafe, is not the dominating conversation. I have been in cafes where if I see a certain worker there, I will not go because it's too quiet and they are too loud and I cannot focus, and I don't feel like blasting music in my headphones the whole time because it's just like blah, 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 yelling about, virtually yelling this conversation. Everybody in the cafe has to basically listen to them. If you don't like that when it happens with your customers and there's just this couple or this group that's just yelling and nobody can study or anything else, it's the same with baristas. And I think we need to train people to be tactful in the way they communicate behind the bar. So while I said earlier, we have to talk to each other about, the drinks and the workflow, I also think that in order to have good bar presence, you need to be aware of the wake of your actions, what goes on as a result of what you say, especially if you're going to be talking with your coworkers about sensitive topics that others in the customer area, if it's something religious or political or something like that, generally this is something that is not going to be, depending on your cafe and your ethos, of course, but I would say it's a better practice to keep the tones low so that customers can opt out of your conversation. Sometimes that's just not the case. And it's awkward, yes, if you're an operator to have to talk to somebody about their volume. Can you bring the decibels down? Because it's distracting to the customers. It's awkward because a lot of times those who are in those positions of barista who don't realize it's happening, maybe they feel embarrassed, but oftentimes I think baristas have this idea that there is this stage on which the show is about them, and that free expression of everything and who they are, and without any kind of filter, is what the name of the game is. And it's just not the case. This is a service industry, it's a hospitality industry, and that is specifically something defined by a focus on others. And it's just in my opinion. Okay, so our conversations need to be done with tact, with regard to where we are, and giving people the ability to opt out of our conversations. And I think that just sometimes people can't hear me. It's funny to say that on a podcast, but it's because I've had years of just being a little self-conscious about talking too loud behind the bar, because I don't want to distract the customer. I don't want them to listen into my conversation. They have their own thing. They're reading a newspaper, they're talking to their loved one, they're trying to study, whatever it is they're doing. I don't want them to have to deal with what I'm saying. And I don't necessarily need to be loud because I'm behind the bar with somebody. The other thing is, when a customer comes up to you, if we're, by the way, available to the customer, it means that we have to drop our conversations right away. There's nothing more annoying, I think, than to think that they've annoyed you. So they come up to the bar and you continue the conversation that you were having with your coworker until it's done. And then you pivot and you put the service face on and the service tone, and that customer can see it. They can see the fake just start. And again, that's a sign and a symptom of somebody who has really not truly decided that this is what they want to do, which, by the way, as responsible adults, we should have the ability to decide and stick to, with integrity, the decision to be a service provider and hospitality professional. If you can't do that, and you can't, you have regrets, so much so that every customer becomes an annoyance, then you need to leave the industry, because you're causing a lot of harm, and to yourself. You're causing harm to yourself. Nobody wants you to be that miserable. There's other jobs that don't require human contact. Okay, so the point is that when the customer is within proximity, we need to be so aware of what we're communicating to them and available to them, that we drop what we're doing and saying right away. I've always trained baristas that even if I'm in the middle of a sentence, I will just drop it. No explanation. I am working. I am clocked in. I am available. My main focus is the customer, and everything I do is in service to this coffee shop, because that's what I agreed to do when I worked here. And far be it from me to betray myself because I said I would do it. That's not good for my own psychology, let alone the customer's experience. So we need to drop it, stop the conversation right away, and go help the customer, or be in a position where you're able to do that without having to travel very far, so that they don't see you have to stop something to help them in a way that makes them feel that, oh, I've interrupted, I'm so sorry. Because remember, we're all about having a acknowledged, welcomed, and included ethos with hospitality, right? So those couple of things I think are just, they're small. They might seem a little nitpicky, but they make such a big difference. A huge difference, okay? So two more things to talk about here. One is, I believe that we should have a stance of graciousness to people who have complaints about a beverage, or there's a mess up on a beverage, or something happens where they spill their beverage, we can tend to be very, I would say, stingy with our disposition to the customer, where I've heard people say, well, we're just going to make them buy a whole new beverage because I'm not in the business of giving away free coffee. Now, you win a lot more points and better return on that investment if you just remake the drink. I think the default needs to be just remake the drink to the customer specifications. And and it's a big if, that customer is all about gaming the system. And I've had people like this. There was this one lady a long time ago. Every single day she would come in, and it was like a game to see how much more free caramel she could get in her drink. And we knew what was going on, so we had to cut her off. But she proved to us through our generosity that what she was about. It was a better practice for us to believe the best about our customers and get them something they enjoy, because then they in turn have a better opinion of our business. And word of mouth advertising is the best advertising. In fact, if you could take out an ad for $4.50 or $5.75 or whatever it costs you to remake that drink, which is actually not that much, it's without the markup, we're just talking about the cost of goods. If you could buy an ad for that much, it would be a great deal, because that customer who is satisfied will pass that satisfaction on to other people. And at the very least, you avoid them passing their dissatisfaction on to people, which is much easier for people to do. We're not going to talk so much about we're not going to actually talk at all about Yelp. We have talked about Yelp before. It's a whole ball of wax. Maybe we'll talk about it a little bit later. I have some opinions, but the point is, remaking a beverage and being on the customer's side, as Danny Meyer would put it in the Setting the Table book, being on their side, being an advocate for them on behalf of the company that you work for to get them something they love. If you have that mentality, that's a generous and gracious mentality. And yeah, it might cost you a couple of more dollars once in a while. Okay. If you're making that many mistakes that you are worried that's going to put you out of business, then it's not the customer. It's your training. It's your quality. It's not the customer. Uh-huh. So be gracious, remake the drink. Unless proven otherwise, people are not trying to game your system. And if they do, then you can put your foot down. Then you can say, I see what's happening here. It's a trend, it's a habit. But don't preemptively judge people as being out to get you. Don't do that with your baristas either. You don't want to have this mentality that everyone's going to steal from me, including the customer. How are you supposed to give good hospitality then? These are the coffee bars with that mentality. These are the coffee bars who have kind of like a soulless presence when you walk in. Like the vibe is just, stress and passive aggressive, relying on gimmicks and over branding to make up for this toxicity that entered into the mix here. Okay, so anyway, the last thing I want to mention that is going to help you master your workflow and just have great bar presence is mastering the foundational flows of the bar. Now, what I wanted to save this one for last because it kind of comes full circle, because we started with it in some ways talking about making the menu the focus of your training and all of the dance that happens behind the bar, what we used to call the dance of the barista. Your business is going to get busier. Your customers are going to change. Your menu might change. The number of people working behind the bar is going to go up and down. So you need to have a playbook for the basic categories of drinks that you serve on your bar. And we really only break these things down to a few categories. There's iced beverages that involve milk and alternative milks. There are hot beverages that involve the same, milk and alternative milk. There is classic and small beverages like espresso, cappuccino, macchiato, things that are in ceramic and to go, plastic cups and paper cups. Each one of these particular categories of drinks needs to have its own workflow. So when, like for instance, syrup versus sauce, they have different viscosities. So if you're going to mix your syrup and sauce in a drink, It's easier to do so with a syrup because it's more watery. But if you're going to mix a sauce, you have to have a whisk, whether it's an automatic whisk or a handheld whisk. The mixing workflow for that drink has to be specific for that drink. And if you haven't thought about that base workflow for these kind of meta categories of your menu, then we're not thinking deeply enough about the menu. And if you can master the workflow, it makes the work of behind the bar a lot easier to think of it in those categories. So it's not every drink is this unique puzzle. Now you've basically built the edge of the puzzle for the barista, and now you can just fill in the center. It becomes a lot easier that way. And it's worth your time to invest in observing your workflow to see how you can refine it over the course of the year. As your business changes, you need to change with it. And if you're staying on top of it by viewing it and refining it, you're going to have a great workflow. You'll have great bar presence. And I think the overall theme today of this episode is intentionality. Intentionality for how we show up for each other, for the customer, for the space, how we do what we do, in creating resources for success through our actions, the way we speak, and the physical, tangible things like tools and instructions and papers and the stuff that supports this ideal of supplying the customer with a great coffee experience. So that's it for our episode today, everybody. I hope that you enjoyed that. And I would be curious what you have done to create a great workflow in your coffee shop. How do you create great bar presence? You can always comment on our Instagram page over at Keys to the Shop. That is the same I guess, on YouTube. So in the comments below on this video on YouTube, you can have that conversation and, level your opinions about some of the things that I was talking about throughout this episode. So with that, I will say goodbye. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. Don't forget about key holder coaching groups. These mastermind groups are happening again. We're opening access to this. The applications will be available to the public soon. But if you want to get on the list of people getting early access to the applications, email chris@keystotheshop.com. And you can also reach out there if you're interested in just one-on-one coaching and consulting for your business. So that's it, everybody. Thank you so much. And as always, I hope that this episode has truly given you keys to the shop.